Battle Royale has a very big problem in that it's trying to focus on far too many different things within a gigantic game. And that's something that's very hard to keep in the balance of if you're trying to do esports or if you're trying to do this casual side, because you need both. And it's not necessary for the casual side to need esports, of course, but it is necessary for the esports side to need the casual side, because otherwise you don't really have a functioning game the entire time. So, to go back to the origin of Battle Royale itself, the first big Battle Royale was DayZ and H1Z1. And these weren't really that big, but they created the platform for the genre itself. So it's kind of important to understand that and understand the kudos that you need to throw to it, because a lot of that is implemented in today's Battle Royale games. Now, Arma 2, just for clarity, was the original engine used that DayZ used to create their mod. Now, some plebs might cite that the Battle Royale idea itself, with the closing zones and everything and people like fighting as they get closer, was created from the Hunger Games, but that's totally fucking incorrect. It was actually created it was inspired by this book titled Battle Royale by Koshun Takami in 1999, and then it was later made into like this really popular Japanese movie titled Battle Royale also, and it was directed by Kenji Fukasaku. So this whole idea of the Battle Royale and the zones closing was like this whole Japanese idea, just from this author who, decided to toy with the survival aspect. And it's a really fucking brutal movie. I saw the movie, I didn't read the book, but it's really awesome because it goes into what you would expect of a Battle Royale game, right? Especially an esports game. It goes and these kids are forced onto this island and they have to fight for survival. And so they get into little packs sometimes to help each other momentarily. And then, you figure out your shit later when it happens to be like, the four of you left or whatever. And so it tracks, the main character, of course, but then there are a whole bunch of these side characters that end up either dying or, whatever. But the idea of Battle Royale it's pretty brilliant, right? It's to force people to move closer to each other and prevent camping or, the game turning into a hide and seek match in a big, gigantic fucking map, right? That would suck, and that would be horrible to watch as an esport, but it'd also be horrible to play. So that's the whole idea of Battle Royale and how it's tried to solve the camping idea within a large map within a whole bunch of players. But here comes the problems, because let's start with the pleb problems. The problems that don't really deal with esports. It just deals with the casual gamers, because frankly, it's kind of hard to win in these games, and that can leave you very unsatisfied, right? There's 100 people in the game, right? So you're that 1%. You are literally the fucking 1%. So social justice warriors are gonna have to come after your ass. But no, in all seriousness, you're the 1%. So the chances of you fucking winning the game, is like, what? 1%, right? There's 99 other fucking people that are gonna destroy you, right? Potentially, right? This is, of course, if everyone was equal and everything and no skill, right? But chances are there's going to be someone better than you, right? So it's already very hard to win in a Battle Royale game, at least in solo, right? In like duos or in squads or whatever with 4 people, of course, your percentage goes up a little bit, but it's still very fucking hard to win in this genre, right? So you might get discouraged, say if you're just playing with your friends or whatever, but your friends suck, then you guys are never going to win ever, and it's very hard to carry those types of players in this type of setting because, there's so much competition. So it's more unlikely that you're going to face multiple people who are as bad as your friend or whatever. And so therefore it's just going to drag you down, and it's a bad experience for all in that case, right? like, yeah, you end up looting a little bit, but then once you end up looting and getting some gear, suddenly a team fucking invades your town or whatever and kills you. So that's one problematic aspect of Battle Royale, is just that it's very difficult to win the entire match, right? And maybe winning is not everyone's cup of fucking tea. I don't get how, but maybe winning, that's not your objective when you play a Battle Royale. It's just to have fun and see how far you can get, right? And the cool thing about it is that there's not a lot of time investment, right? You can drop in fucking Pachinki and fight a whole bunch of different people, in PUBG or whatever, and immediately either win and you can then play out the game, or you lose and you only wasted like 10 minutes of your time, right? Jumping into the game with your buddies, or maybe jumping in solo. So there's that aspect too. You could just go buck wild. Another problem is that there are too many angles to cover when it comes to like this shooter game, right? Either third person or first person. Let's just stick with first person for argumentative sake, because third person, I've noticed within PUBG, just playing it, there's a lot more passivity because you can see things around you, and you don't necessarily have to face check or peek around a corner or whatever. You could just kind of look with the camera, so it's far easier to avoid conflict. But with first person, there's just too many angles to cover at once, and so it makes it very difficult to like get the scope of who's actually going to be attacking you, where they're attacking you from. And of course, Fortnite obviously solved this with building and walls and everything, but that also goes against one of the primary tenets of FPS, which is positioning. Like, positioning is fucking king, aside from aiming, of course, but positioning is very, very key in an FPS and getting the jump on your opponent. So if you have bad positioning and you're just stuck in the middle of this entire square and there's fields around you, you're gonna get fucked by somebody. And it makes it exacerbated when you suddenly are stuck with 99 other people and you're in a field. It's not a good idea, right? So there are just too many angles to cover when it comes to the open space of a battle royale, because it's set in a primarily open world and there are a ton of players. So it's just really problematic in that sense in the entire genre. Now, the problem with the esports side of it is that there are just too many storylines to follow when you're looking for a favorite team or a favorite player or whatever. So going back to that Battle Royale movie, the Japanese one, the movie didn't even show everyone die, right? The number just ticks down from, I don't even remember the numbers. I think it was like 100, right? And that's the problem with Battle Royale and esports. It doesn't follow, it can't follow all of the storylines. And so when you're looking at this movie and you see the number tick down and you're like, oh, I wonder what happened to those dudes, but it doesn't fucking matter, right? Because it's inconsequential characters and they can't follow 100 characters. And so oftentimes when you're watching a game like PUBG, I'll see that a squad dies, but I never get to see the action, right? But what happens if that's my favorite team? What happens if I want to watch Cloud9 go through the entire tournament and see their epic moments of struggle when they get into a firefight or whatever, and maybe they just jump out and they get into a buggy or whatever and they just fucking bounce, or if they try and fight them and maybe it attracts another squad, but maybe you just don't see that entire interaction, and then suddenly 2 of their members are dead, the camera switches over to them, and then you're just wondering what the hell happened, right? And then they try and catch it in the replay maybe to see what happened or whatnot, but then maybe something else happens, because the likelihood of something else happening at that time is very high because there's so many fucking players in the game. So you have this problem of just too many players, too many storylines, and it's very difficult to follow the favorite star teams or whatnot. And maybe even if you like one of the offshoot teams that are smaller, you might not even really ever get to see that team. You might not get to see like a wild card team play because they're always going to be switching over to the big name squads, right? They're going to be switching over to the Cloud9s. So what if you're a viewer from a smaller region that has this wildcard team that's playing in the tournament, and you kind of want to see how they're doing, but the broadcast doesn't really care about that because they have to follow, what the majority of fans want to see. So that in itself is very hard to balance when it comes to the esport, because if there's all these different storylines and things that are going on, it's just very difficult to keep pace. And not only that, but outside the game as well too. Like, if I'm a journalist in PUBG, how the fuck am I realistically going to try and interview all these different players and get all these different stories and build these storylines? I'm probably just going to try and go for maybe the top 4 teams, top 5 teams, and that's about it. And so you get this coverage of the storylines even outside of the game and their perspectives and what was going on. You get a small glimpse of the entire report of the outside flow of the game and the outside storylines, or maybe the personalities, things like that. And it becomes this huge mess that is just convoluted and overrun by the really big top teams. So it makes it very difficult for even the smaller storylines to emerge and for you to immerse yourself in those ones. So the solution may be to allow players to stream their games, right? Like, that's the most obvious solution to this problem. But there's a couple drawbacks to that, because then first they would need like a special contract with Twitch to put all the ad revenue generated during those times on the streamer's channel to be directly put towards the event organizer, because the event organizer isn't going to stand for that shit, right? They want that ad money, right? That's what they want, and they want their sponsors to also get those ads in there too. So certain sponsors will put a certain amount of money for however many ads that they run during that time on the Twitch channel, right? So you can run exclusive ads. Well, now you need to do that for all these different players, right? And then you need to put up different contracts for all this shit and write clauses. And so it would be a ton of work. And I'm not saying it's not impossible, but it just sounds like a nightmare. And I don't really know if a legal team would be up for that, or if Twitch would be able to do that. It just sounds like a lot of fucking hands and a lot of different cookie jars. Then you have that you would split your fan base essentially by even further by disassociating the event organizer and the tournament itself from the actual players. It would just be like you're watching fucking the sneaky of PUBG or whatever playing PUBG, right? And it doesn't really have any large association or more focus on the tournament organizer themselves rather than the player. So then the tournament organizer doesn't even get that much credit and that much recognition, or and maybe this affects sponsorships in the future and whatnot. So that's a small problem as well too. And then honestly, I think one of the biggest things is that it's probably going to be pretty boring, right? If you want to watch one player, okay, I get it. That's fine. You want to see how they play, how good they are, whatever. But players are really different in a competitive environment. And you're probably also not going to get voice comms due to, the competitive integrity. Maybe someone is listening to the voice comms, and then once you go to a break or whatever, that coach or whatnot breaks it down and it's just like, all right, they were saying this in the voice comms, we need to go do this, and this is how we combat that. So you would essentially be releasing voice comms to the public and to the enemy teams. And so maybe they might not hit you during that tournament, but the next tournament they figure out what your comms are, and so they can strategize around that. So you could see the problem of, even if they allowed streamers to do their individual streams, then there wouldn't be voice comms, like fucking no ifs, ands. And then if there wouldn't be voice comms, it probably wouldn't be very entertaining. You would just be watching a single person viewer. You wouldn't know what their plans are or anything, and you wouldn't really be following the action, right? Because a lot of the battle royale is just looting in the beginning, and so instead you would probably just want to watch the teams that are very close to each other that suddenly get into a fight the first 10 minutes of the game. That would be very interesting. So those are pretty much all the problems. And then the technological problem is that you see that there's the viable technology for a stadium, right? And putting that much load on an internet connection for all the streaming is just, how much content could you actually upload at that time? And I don't know feasibly how limited the internet connections are, but having 100 people stream on an internet connection, I imagine you're gonna run into some really big faults with that, and I don't think that's any way viable for a stadium to actually compensate with a good internet connection. I don't think it's even really possible. And even if it is, just imagine how fucking expensive that would be. I don't fucking know how big that internet bill would be, but you'd have to have a ridiculous connection. So there's that aspect too. Now, to jump back to the actual game aspects, let's just face it, the fucking RNG in PUBG or in Fortnite or in fucking Apex Legends is far too much, right? And this is what makes it very difficult to create a esport with, is that it's very difficult for a player to be consistently the best if there's too much RNG in the game, or even a team to be consistently the best if there's too much RNG. And so when you add too much RNG to a game, it never really feels good to see a player lose due to the RNG, or especially your favorite player lose. So if you're a spectator, right? So at both ends of the spectrum, both the player and the viewer are feeling cheated because of the RNG itself. And so if someone, gets a fucking level 3 helmet or whatever, and maybe he gets a level 3 vest or some shit, and then you're just like, okay, and now they're next to a team that has all level 1 gear or some shit, or doesn't even have a fucking a rifle, and all they have is pistols or some shit, or an SMG, then suddenly they get wiped out, and you're just like, whoa, that was my favorite team, and they just got rocked by all these rifles and this level 3 gear at the very beginning of the game. How fair is that? That didn't really show that much skill. Because at the end of the day, at this high level of play, once you give such a big advantage to a player like that, they're just going to fucking roll over the game. They're just going to destroy anyone in their path, and they know exactly how to use an advantage. And that's the problem with RNG itself, is once you give a good player an advantage like that, they know exactly how to use it. They know exactly how to manipulate the game state in order to take optimal advantage of something like that. So the RNG itself is a very big problem. And the reason why it may be good in, say, a casual game is because then, well, if the RNG works in your favor, then suddenly you have a really good chance to win the game, right? This is your time to shine. Say you play 20 games in a day, but you lose 19 of them, but then suddenly you get all this super good gear. Well, then that's going to increase your chances of actually winning, and therefore you might win, and you might feel really good, like, hey, yeah, I won that game, even though realistically you only won it because you just got really good gear and everyone else got shit gear around you. So that in itself has no place in esports. The less RNG, the better, generally. There can be a minimal amount, but you still want to curb that as much as possible so that you can show expression of skill from the players themselves. So that RNG aspect is a problem. Then you have the problem of, the circle, right? And that the best idea is to not fight, right? That's the entire good idea of Battle Royale itself, and to hug the circle so that it closes, so that you know that no one else is pretty much behind you. And that's the safest bet, because at the end of the day, you want to close off all the angles. As I was saying, there are too many fucking angles within a battle royale game that you can be shot from. So instead, you want to hug the entire circle, and as it's closing, you just keep hugging it. And so the idea is that if you don't fight, then essentially you might just win the game by other people wiping each other out as they meet each other. And if you also let off your gun, right, you shoot a couple bullets or your rifle, whatever, all those teams are going to hear you, right? So sound travels better than a visual, right? Because you can just hear it in your headphones. So you automatically know, okay, they're kind of around in this area, and then you know where to look. Versus a visual is just, okay, you have to actually kind of know where to look in order to see a person. So fighting would then let off a sound cue, and then suddenly you have 4 or 5 teams looking at you, and the likelihood of you dying is actually pretty high. So the best idea is, even if you do see a person, you might not actually want to fight them until they actually see you. Instead, you want to keep track of them, or keep tabs or whatever. And that's introduced also too by the tournament organizers tried to curb that by doing points, to where you get points for killing people, and so therefore like that can increase your team score or whatnot, which is a good idea in itself as well too. But generally, it's still the best idea to not fight. So I just think Battle Royale is not really suited to be a great esport due to the spectate problem, the RNG, the player aspects, the storyline, everything about that. And I mean, also Fortnite being fucking absolute asshats and releasing content days before a tournament, but that's only one game in the entire genre. So Battle Royale, it just seems like it's trying to do too much all at once, and there are no real great ways to overcome these aspects. Hopefully game developers do end up satisfying the plebs while also satisfying esports. Maybe there's an esports tournament mode to where it limits some of these things. But just looking from the outset of the entire product itself, it looks very hard to manage, and I don't think Battle Royale as an esport is going to be very successful in the future, but I'm going to be proved wrong.